here in the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we is stoned, immaculate.
Hello and welcome. This is the C86 show. I'm David Eastaugh. As you know, we love a special guest. This week it's going to be two people. It's going to be Vix from We've Got a Fuzzbox and we're going to use it, and also Martin Tracey, who has just written a book titled We Had a Fuzzbox and We Used It. The book is available from all good bookshops and also is available online. I will put a link in the notes below so you can find out more about it and buy a copy because it's absolutely beautiful. So this is the interview with Martin and Vix. So after several minutes of interesting but casual chat, we get down to the, well, not the exciting subject of the early formative years, but more about how and why Martin decided to put a book out or produce a book on such an amazing indie band from the 80s. Martin, it's over to you.
I mean, I love music anyway. I love Birmingham, and so in terms of them as a topic, it was a bit of a no-brainer because we're of the same generation, cut from the same cloth from Birmingham. We're like sticks of rock. Birmingham cut through us. However, the approach came to me rather than me to them, although I had wrote a smaller book, a discography of Fuzzbox, and that really was part of the introduction to me writing the full-blown Fuzzbox book that we have now. And it was just like one of them things that had to happen, because as soon as we met, we all got on like a house on fire at the time, and we just snowballed from there. And we was able to bounce off each other and get. I was able to enable them, drag the stories out the girls and some of the memories, and it's just worked wonders in terms of getting a story.
Yes, well, it was probably, was it 40 years ago when the band formed then, Vix? Yes. What was that kind of moment? Was it 85?
Yes, it was. Yeah. So our first release wouldn't have been till 86. That's why we've got our 40th year anniversary. You know, really this year we're kind of celebrating it, and we love the fact that it ties in with the C86 thing.
Yes, that's
I mean, there have been talks about potentially having a C86 gig with some of the bands that play. I'd be so up for that. I think that'd be amazing. So
yes. So Martin, the band got together. I mean, doing this show for quite a long period of time. Most bands have a 5-year narrative.
Yeah.
And you'll spit it quite well. They get together, they have the 12-month honeymoon period.
Yeah.
Then the John Peel session, or a John Peel play, then a John Peel session, and then the first album, the tour, the second album, bit of tour, and then it's over. So did you feel, with 2 albums, you were going to have enough material to do a book?
If I was to just treat it very much as a very strict music biography, just talking about the music, it wouldn't have really filled the book that it has. But of course, the essence of Fuzzbox is the fun and their attitude and them as people and as a unit, which is probably a bigger story than the music in some ways, because it was 4 girls at a time in a male-dominated industry, and they were able to, be the original girl power girls, the original riot girls, and there's so much side of that story that needed telling. And I understand what you're saying. There was only the small window, so to speak, of their fame. I mean, the Beatles only had 8 years as a band together, and look how many books have been written about them.
So we still have 5 years, though.
Yes, still have 5 years. Yeah, 2 albums. And the fact that the 2 albums are very distinct and very different, that was a story in itself as well. They went from indie, vibey, sort of very young girls. They were always young, obviously, because they were signed as schoolgirls. But then when it come to big band, signed by a major, away from the indie side of things, was it a pop spoof or was it actually serious pop? I think you couldn't. If it was serious with a little S for sure. And the videos became glossy, very MTV orientated, and so that it was a game of 2 halves, just as their career was. But then, of course, what the book also looks at is beyond the window of when they were mainly in the public eye, if I can put it that way, because I had 2 reunions after that. We also have to deal with the sad passing of Joe in 2012, so that's in the book. And it's brought all the way up to current date. You know, what have they been doing the last 40 years? Well, read the book and you'll find out.
Yes, absolutely. So in the book, that was quite interesting because one never knows, the background to the members. But your father, Vix, was kind of a headmaster, wasn't he? And he got an OBE as well. So, because looking at some of the photographs that came through, all look incredibly young. So, were you all school kids when the band started at this stage? At the very beginning.
Oh, right. So Tina, myself, and Joe all went to school together. So yeah, we just left school. So it was a school holiday. When you leave before you go to sixth form, and then Maggie and Joe being sisters. Maggie was 5 years older, so there was that age gap. But the 3 of us all went to school together. And my dad, he got an OBE for his services to education. So he was an amazing man, real charisma, a big music lover, as all of our family always were. And he'd go into the toughest, roughest sort of schools and turn them round. He's really a real sort of maverick and was really supportive because people would be quite surprised that as my dad was like the headmaster, how come he was... wasn't he telling me I should go and get an education? But he was always for a life education. And he was like, look, I know you've always loved singing and performing, and I know it's what you want to do. You can always go back to education later. So he was really, really supportive and really very instrumental in getting everyone else to sign, because the other parents, Maggie could sign for herself because she was of age, but the other 2, the parents were very, very reticent to sign us to this, these London... sort of people getting involved, accountants and lawyers and stuff like that. But my dad just felt, speak to the people involved, find out what's going on, make sure it's as safe as possible. And we had Patsy Winkleman, who was our manager, female manager, who was just like a miniature Rottweiler kind of. Yeah, my dad trusted her as well. I'm a mum, that she would look after us, and she did. She was like our teacher, our auntie, our manager. So we were well looked after.
Yes, because your story vaguely has a moment that reminded me of Chumbawamba when they'd gone to some sort of folk person who put on a regular event and sort of was asking for sort of future acts, and they said, "Oh, we'll do something," and he said, "Okay, that's great, we'll put you down." And it's like, God, we haven't played an instrument, so you had slightly.
Really?
Yes, they just went, "Oh God, we've just done the same thing." In one of their films, like Well Done, Now Sod Off, I think that was the film that they mentioned this particular person who was quite a mover and shaker in Leeds. And so you were similar in the sense that you just said, let's just go and perform, even though we've not really done much performing.
No, we didn't have a band.
Yes.
Yeah,
Big lie.
we were always going out watching other people's bands, whether they were just like friends, like local bands and so on, and as well as the Three Johns and Gene Loves Jezebel, the Cults, Cure, Mission, all sorts. So we were always going to live gigs, but we really supported all the local scene as well. Everybody did, the kind of crowd that we knew. And the Bang Sisters said that they had a gig. Do you want to come along? Like, yeah. And who's supporting you? And they said, we haven't got a support act. So we volunteered ourselves and then went away giggling and formed a band the afternoon before the gig.
Right. So there we go. So did you all just have to sort of volunteer an instrument or a microphone at that stage? Or did anybody have a little bit of a leaning towards a particular instrument?
There were a few leanings. Mike Grant has a band called the Family Patrol Group, very experimental, and that was Maggie's boyfriend at the time. And he had a cellar, so we went down into the cellar and we were like kids in a candy store. There was a violin that they used to put through sort of echoes and delays, and so Maggie and I both played that on different songs. And, it's all just kind of woo, 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 woo. It was just crazy noises. It wasn't like played well. And there was like a big metal coil that banged. And Jo had done a little bit of guitar, so she went for that mainly. I'd done quite a lot of singing, so I went for that. And then the other stuff was always up for grabs. And we did like to change around, you know, go, I haven't
Yes.
played the drums yet, I want to go. So it was like, it was, yeah, really fun.
I guess at the time you can't really look at it, but in the same way that you can when you reflect, but I sort of put down that period from 83 to 87 as a kind of golden time for indie pop. It was also the time of the Smiths, but there was a bit of there was a bit of a moment, wasn't there? There did feel like it, as a fanboy, it was quite a scene during that period. So it must have felt quite. There were things in place that kind of managed to sort of put the band from a cellar to a gig to then being on the circuit a little bit quickly. Did you sort of have any awareness of being suddenly part of a indie scene at all?
I mean, we locally, so sort of Birmingham, but also regionally, and then obviously it moves out from there. There was a really great scene. I mean, the clubs and stuff were wonderful. That's very well documented in the book. But also, you know, the radio stations, the promoters, the labels. There was a really great scene. You know that you those things existed, whereas now it's extremely hard to, you know, get those people behind you.
Yes, well, I also think, in an interesting way, why there's so many indie bands. One of the things as well was there was unemployment, but there's the job seekers allowance and enterprise allowance schemes that a lot of people could get on, and then you didn't have to work for a year, but you still got you've got your dole money. And then I think people just said, "Oh, I'll do the band," and then you had those 3 weekly music papers that had huge circulations: the John Peel Show, Janice Long, Kid Jensen, and then every little city and town had an alternative indie night, so people could get the transit van and live the life of a rock star in an indie way. So that I think it all kind of helped people to kind of get the next level up,
God,
really,
yeah.
or feel like you're progressing. So what was the songwriting? What was the songwriting process like for the band? Did you all come together and just have ideas, or was there one or two members who sort of took that, under their sort of umbrella?
So, at the very beginning, the first gig, we actually kind of revamped a couple of songs that myself, Tina, and Joe at our school. I'd kind of I'd like the lovely music teacher for us to do this awful performance, and we kind of banged, tissue boxes and twanged rubber bands on things and homemade shakers, and we did 2 versions of Fever, which had lots of woo woo woo, you got my fever, a bit Elvisy, but a bit more strange. And I loved whooping, and I still do.
Yes.
And then we did a weird version, a punk version of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. So I kind of already had those sort of ideas, and I wanted to form a band anyway. So we did Fever, Spirit in the Sky.
Right. That was
Yeah,
straight in there.
yeah, and then a song that I'd written. I don't know, don't even know if I just wrote it as kind of a poem or what, but years and years and years ago, before even bands were a thing, called "Console Me." It was quite dark little number. So that's what we cobbled together initially, and generally. Maggie and I would write separately. I wrote most of the songs, and most of the lyrics, but we tended to write separate lyrics.
Right.
But then Joe or Tina might have a bass line or a guitar riff, or so we'd bring our ideas into the rehearsal room and then bash them out really.
Yes. And then there
Or
was that. Sorry.
Maggie might have lyrics and I'd come up with a melody, and
Yes, because there was a great film a couple of years ago with Stuart Lee and Robert Lloyd, King Rocker, and obviously being part of the Nightingales and Robert Lloyd. What was the sort of part of his sort of input to the band? How important was that?
extremely vital. I mean, Martin, do you want to?
Yes. Tell us about Robert Lloyd.
Do butt in, Vix, if I get
course.
wrong. It's your history rather than mine. So, I mean, Rob contributed to the book, as did Patsy, Vix has already spoke about. Yeah, but it was the second gig. Rob, there's a little bit of blurred lines around what Rob was looking for by Rob's own admission as well, because what Rob tells us in the book is Rumour has it I was looking for a female violinist, and he can't even truly remember if that was the case.
Yeah, but Pete
Yeah,
Birchmore
yeah,
from the Nightingales, otherwise known as Tank,
Tank, yeah.
he verified that is exactly because he
That
went
is
with
exactly
him.
it, right? Okay.
So I'm sure that's the reason.
Yeah,
'Cause
so
that's
we
what
think
we
that's
were
it. So
told. Yeah.
anyway, Rob went to the gig for sure, and whether he was going to poach them or not, he didn't. History tells us he didn't poach them in terms of one of them joining his band. However, he saw something that he liked. There's attractiveness in the organised chaos, or disorganised chaos even. The way that they fed off each other, bounced off each other, had their in jokes. There was a camaraderie that was a bit of an X factor that you just couldn't bottle, And I think Rob was very astute in understanding that there's something here. There's a spark that I can turn into a flame here. And the next thing, he asked for a demo. Somehow the girls managed to get a demo together, and he did get them in the studio, Rich Bitch Studios, which is a famous studio in Birmingham. Black Sabbath have recorded there, for example. And the music was okay. They were put with some young engineers as well, which I think that worked, because having a band very much in its infancy with an engineer or producer in their infancy, that worked well because they could kind of grow together. And the Boston Steve Austin album came out of that. But also, to get a bit of experience in there, they jammed with Horace Panther from the Specials and Fuzz Townsend, Pop Will Eat Itself drummer, as he became. So, and they loved, I mean, yeah, it's very well documented in the book about how they loved being with Vindaloo, how they loved them Vindaloo summer specials where they used to go around the seaside with Ted Chippington
Amazing.
and the Nightingales, do Rockin' with Rita. They'd always obviously do Rockin' with Rita, which was a song that they'd done. And you just get this imagery of beach balls being thrown, even if it's good old British summer seaside like we used to see. Remember the postcards with the rude jokes on it? It always takes me back to that vision,
Yeah.
even though
Yes.
that's not what the show was about. But it's kind of
Well,
that
we
nostalgic
did
era.
have lots of inflatables, so I still
Yeah,
have
yeah,
inflatables now, as you know. I bring them along to gigs. You never know when
Yes.
you might
yeah.
need them.
But ultimately, the girls as a commodity, they kind of outgrew that indie mushroom, if that's the right word, or indie bubble, and they were destined for other things, as we now know.
Yes, well, it sort of happened all very quickly, didn't it? Because I can
Mm,
remember hearing "Love Is the Slug" and then "Rules and Regulations" and
mm,
John Peel playing it and got very excited. I remember reading out a letter that one of the members of the band or the band had put together, which was rather cute and sweet. Have you ever managed to hear any of the John Peel shows that he broadcast during that time, where he introduces the band and sort of little moments of your sessions with him?
There is the BBC sessions are released. I believe it would have been through Cherry Red, so they are out there actually.
Right, because it's always
Yeah.
interesting when you hear the John Peel show that, occasionally, people put up online or on YouTube, and then you just hear his little chat between songs,
mm.
which is always kind of delightful. So when you suddenly heard Love is a Slug, Rules and Regulations, and Console Me, what was that like? Because you must have been still in your teens when suddenly this was coming out of Radio 1 to a massive audience, even though when I liked the show, I didn't realise that many other people were listening to it. But you realise that it had a concentrated audience, didn't it, of people who took it very seriously.
Yeah, I mean, we were always, I suppose it's just that sort of Brummie down to earth thing. We were always just kind of took it in our stride. So whilst we did think it was great, I mean, being played on John Peel and actually meeting him and being on his session was phenomenal, and being on the John Peel stage at Glastonbury, we did value all of that, but we weren't kind of in awe of it, if you know what I mean. We just kind of, we were just having fun, and we'd be taking the mickey out of someone, one of us. I mean, Joe fell over on Top of the Pops, for example, and, we thought it was hilarious. And quite often, a string would break, or we'd pull a stupid face, or, and we were just kind of, I don't think we kind of really realised the enormity of it because it was just so fast. It was like a blooming roller coaster. It really was. It was just next thing. There was no stopping. From once we kind of released rules and regulations, and it sold 1,000, and another 1,000, another 1,000, and it was lovely because every 1,000 we could do another, like a bright pink one or a swirly purple one or green, or which was really fun. It never really stopped until it did.
Till it did. Well, and also getting on the cassette was very good, because at the time I know the NME used to bring out loads of these cassettes, he says, looking down at them all. But this one just took off, didn't it? I mean, I guess they just thought, oh, this is just going to be cheap and fun and they'll sell 5,000. Then it sort of became a genre of music, not just indie pop, but C86. So that was just another amazing stepping stone, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we were really pleased to be taken in by NME because, of course, again, we read the NME, so you sort of listen to the John Peel and you're on it. We read the NME, we're on it. And as time went on, we were actually on the front cover of Smash Hits and NME the same week, and we loved that. It was like we straddled both sides. I was so proud of that. That yeah, we can do the pop thing and we can do the indie cred thing. We're both things, like a lot of us are. We're not just one thing.
Yes.
So that was great.
And a few years later, which seems like a long time, but it actually wasn't, when Lush came along, obviously there's always this kind of emphasis, isn't there, on the lead singer, especially female. How were you coping with that kind of attention of suddenly going from being schooled to suddenly the front, the front person gets a lot of attention and then suddenly you have to deal emotionally with that. But at the time, it probably feels a bit weird. But how can you remember what it was like suddenly becoming this, the Madonna of indie pop? I don't know. I never thought of that before, but it just came to mind.
You've only had that to put in the book at the time, David.
But suddenly that, because the videos, which are great, and I bought one of the NME kind of VHS cassettes of these kind of indie pop videos, because you couldn't ever see them, but, later on in life you see them. So it was great fun. But then, yes, the attention that you must have started all getting, and yourself as the lead singer. What was that? How were you navigating that?
It was a bit strange at first because I saw us all as four sort of equals, that we were, but especially once we were on a major and when we were on things like in Smash Hits or something, or started to do photo shoots, then more and more it's just simple, to be honest, as well. Yes, they want a focal point, but also it makes for a good photo to have one person and have the other one, rather than having to have all four prominent. That's quite hard to manage. So that did feel strange to me, and I was often saying, "Oh, can't they come forward?" Or I felt quite bad. I felt quite guilty, I think, in a way of like being pushed forward. And it was strange because in some ways, I think the other three really didn't like it, but in other ways they really wanted that. So they weren't like, I would basically, I loved doing photo shoots and video shoots and hanging out in the studio for like hours and hours and hours on end, listening to a hi-hat, big edited. I didn't care. I loved it all. And I think that they were quite happy for me to sort of do a lot of the legwork, do a lot of the photo shoots or the interviews. But obviously it did make it a bit tricky as well at times.
Yes, it must be tricky. Did you find putting the book together, Martin, then that sort of there's like two halves, aren't there? The indie half with Vindaloo and then the second half with Warner's that you signed. So what was it like sort of treading those paths of kind of diplomacy, being the...
Yeah, it was, I've described the book actually as a game of two halves with extra time.
Being a footy
not
fan.
Quite going to penalties. Because that's kind of what it is. There is a period of transition between obviously the Boston Steve Austin album and the Big Bang era, which is also sort of approached in the book, which includes how the girls felt at the time, much of what Vix has spoke on about in terms of going from the indie to the Big Bang, and Tina, for example, has said in the book how her roots were very much in the indie camp, and therefore when they moved to Big Bang, although it was a momentous occasion to be signed by Major, to be working with Andy Richards from Frankie Goes to Hollywood fame in terms of production, etc., she really didn't like it. As much. She definitely preferred the indie roots camp, but it was just something that kind of had to happen. And the other thing that comes through a lot of discussions with the girls as well is that not having that third album, but almost Big Boston Steve Austin's album one, and almost Big Bang is the third album, and there wasn't one in between. It's kind of they're that stark from Boston Steve Austin to Big Bang. You know, they're that different in terms of approach of musical style. That there's almost, well, where's the middle album? And then, of course, what we also look at in the book is that once they'd done that with the two halves, it was very difficult to move to what that third album ever was going to look like, you know. With hindsight, there's some opinions of how it could, you know, Britpop came not long after that. And these could have been the queens of Britpop, for example, as we've been said. But yeah, it wasn't straightforward, even though it seemed straightforward. It's a game of two halves because of that, because of the difference in the two styles and the musicianship, and even the image changed. That got a lot of layers and a lot of complexity into the journey for the girls. And remember, they're growing at a very young age as well, so they're growing into their sort of late teens, early 20s. With having to deal with all them changes.
Yes. So did you stick with the same manager from the first to the beginning to the end, or did you change management halfway through?
No, we had the same manager. So Patsy Winkleman was actually the girlfriend of Rob Lloyd, and she was a teacher at the time. And I think he just thought we needed somebody to be kind of looking after us. And he said, "Why don't to Patsy, why don't you give it a go?" And she seemed very up for it and was very capable. Because of course she'd already been around the label and the music business and stuff for a while on the local scene. So no, she was with us the whole way through. And she
Yes.
came to the launch that we did in Birmingham, the book launch. So that was absolutely lovely. And
So did Rob come as well go to the book launch? Was he there? Rob Lloyd.
No, he couldn't get there. We did have lots of blasts from the past, though. It was really lovely.
Yes. So what's your memories of Big Bang? Because I mean, I still got fond, I've got fond memories because I quite like a lot of the songs on it. I love.
Me too. Yeah, I love Big Bang. I love it.
I mean, I love International Rescue, but it's on its side too, isn't it? International Rescue Cell. And I have a real soft spot for Irish Bride, actually.
Yeah, it's beautiful, isn't it? so Maggie wrote those lyrics, and it's related to sort of her family and her background.
And Self
but I
is
was
great.
very into all the sort of Kate Bush kind of thing, so I wrote the melody, and I wanted to go off on a bit of a Kate Bush vibe there, which I think we achieved really well. Yeah, it's lovely.
So it all moves very quickly, doesn't it? I mean, at the time, it probably seems like a massive thing. Then you look and go, God, 86 to 89 is nothing, is it really? But was there much kind of dilemma and existential angst of sort of what to do after Boston Steve Austin? Did you have time to sort of process it at all?
Yeah, and we did work with different producers, and it just somehow it didn't gel. I mean, we just dived into it, haven't we? Just like jumped into this like huge melting pot and just done we picked up what was in front of us. So a crazy violin with pedals, a fuzzy guitar, or this, that. We just grabbed it all and made a sound with it. I mean, I don't know that depends what you call pop, right? Because Patsy said to the other day, well, you've always liked pop, you were always the pop person. I was like, well, I wasn't into the sort of the whole, a lot of the very mainstream things like Stock Aitken and Waterman and so on, but I do love, I loved a lot of the 50s and 60s stuff. I think that comes through in quite a lot of my songwriting. But Adam and the Ants or Bowie or there's other were they pop kind of? So
yes,
and the amount that you change from when you're sort of 15, 16 to when you're even like 17, 18. I mean, I've got a daughter who's 15 now. And, she's changing all the time from when she's like 13 to 15, and then 15 to, I mean, you change so much, when you're looking for your identity. And the Birmingham scene that we were on had sort of changed a bit as well. So I think that whole kind of alternative scene, which was just phenomenal when we were first going out and formed the band, was like nothing else, and that had started to fizzle out. So I guess we were all finding our own identities and hanging out with different people and listening to different music. So it was very, very hard to
Yes.
pull all the styles and stuff together.
Well, I think being in your teens is really, like you said, is tricky, but being within a, like a gang, I suppose, it is even worse because everyone's going to be developing so differently, and and people have ideals. And I mean, also the 80s was quite an interesting period because we had the Thatcher years, and then you had Red Wedge, and you had the miners' strike before that, and then the Falklands. But then we were going into the poll tax period, and like you mentioned, the production. You mentioned Stock Aitken. That production sound had started with Trevor Horn, hadn't it? And then with Frankie and ABC, and then it was like this very, gated reverb sound that we started to have on top of the pops, and it was quite hard going. And I mean, David Bowie brought out Let's Dance, which was all right, then Tonight and Never Let Me Down, which not so good. So I mean, it's like it's
I love
kind
Let's Dance though.
Yeah, well, yes, absolutely, but it's like it's not then Tin Machine.
No.
It's it's a tricky period, and also at that time, indie pop for me, like I mentioned, was that great window, which was that 5 years. But then ecstasy comes along, doesn't it? And that, I mean, we forget that at that age, everyone, we all slightly drinking too much, and some people are taking drugs. And Birmingham had a bit of a dark edge in the 70s and 80s, didn't it? Because there was quite a few musicians. There was a compilation that came out a few years ago with Birmingham bands, and you thought, God, quite most of those are dead actually, because they must. So there was always the dark side to the 80s, isn't there? With sort of that rock and roll lifestyle. And also there was Glastonbury. And did you play 87 at Glastonbury then? Was that your year?
Was it 86 or 87?
I thought it was 86.
86. I mean, Glastonbury in those days was quite horrendous. It was like going to war, wasn't it? Because you had all the...
We loved it.
The travelling community and just that kind of...
It was wonderful, David, honestly.
It was like Mad Max in mud.
Well, you know what? Actually, thankfully, it wasn't that muddy the time we went there initially. So what was really beautiful about it was a peace festival. It was a CND festival, and you could leave anything anywhere. You could leave your cameras, your money, your belongings in your tent or on a little pile there, and everything was safe, and so it was very hippy dippy, but it was wonderful. I loved it.
Well, yes, we were on a ley line. We should be all resident. But it was also a lot of the travelling community as well as the Jesus Army. It was quite a cultural clash, wasn't it? It was quite, and there was 1 year where they had this Stonehenge made out of cars. I don't know if you remember that one. That was 87 if you were there. And people like the Wooden Tops were playing. But again, there was that alternative stage, which was quite incredible because it captures that sort of scene. So with the band and going into the late 80s and the album, then how were you all not getting on at that? When you were going into the studio, did it feel good, or looking back on it you thought, there was issues, there were a lot of tissues
for Big Bang?
Yes.
I mean, even before it was Big Bang or whatever, and we just had some songs on the go because we worked with some quite big producers. I mean, I really loved working with Hugh Cornwell, and I thought that's a great direction. Because we've got the sort of the songs which are more poppy, catchy, but you've got his credible edge and get the keyboards in and stuff. But me and Tina got on really well with him, but the other girls didn't really like it, and the record company didn't. And this unfortunately became a bit of a pattern that might get on with some of us or not, or the record label didn't like it until we worked with Andy Richards. We had been offered Trevor Horn, but he was going to be another 6 months wait, and everybody already felt it's already been a long enough wait. And he said, well, you can have one of Trevor Horn's boys, as they call it, Trevor Horn boys. He's a grown man, Andy Richards, but he'd done a lot with Dusty Springfield and Propaganda, Rush actually, and Frankie Goes to Hollywood, and we thought, let's go for that. And I really embraced. I think we all did, but I spent a lot of time in the studio, and I really embraced the technology. I loved that we could play around with like vocal sounds and harmonies, and use the Fairlight and some of the effects that Kate Bush used, and position where your voice was, or I found it really, really interesting and really fascinating. So again, those are the toys that are in front of us now, and
Yes.
you use them and get into it really. I loved being in the studio. It was very enjoyable.
Did you manage to tour with that album at all? Was because you mentioned in the book you'd done was it Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours of gigging or something like that, and it was quite interesting because it's amazing how many hours you probably clocked up during that really initial period.
Yeah, maybe that was it. And it's like, right, you've done your stint.
Yes, but then I think he said, and then they did 10,000 hours, and then they did Sergeant Pepper, and and all that kind of. I think that's what he was trying to make out in this his kind of hypothesis, wasn't it? Did you? Yes. So at that stage, when you went in the studio, what was did you tour with that particular album? Because you did some amazing videos, didn't you? The videos were bonkers, and they must have cost a small fortune, actually.
Yeah.
Did you direct, or did you help direct those kind of?
No, not in those days. I mean, I've produced sort of videos of my own in more recent days. And we'd have ideas and an input, but no. But I mean, I think Pink Sunshine was 50 grand.
Yes, it's probably.
We had no concept of whether we knew that was quite a lot of money, but in comparison to what some other people were spending at the time, it wasn't that much. And they were like, "Oh, we'll make the money back. Don't worry," and then and so on. So it was, crazy amounts of money.
When you think, sorry,
no, go for it, please.
Just to the comparisons already made between the two start camps of Boston and rules and regulations. Cost 37 quid.
Yes.
That's a video. And then, Vix has just said about £50,000 for Pink Sunshine. So you can see the contrasting approach. And that's probably just the balloons in Pink Sunshine.
The helium. I mean, it's something that we are all. We all were quite annoyed about that we didn't get to properly tour. So we did a tour of the Far East, which I absolutely loved. And I dug my heels in to insist that I sang live, because it was just PAs and they wanted to change us to mine. And that was the sort of tour it was. So we weren't overly happy about that we weren't playing as a live band. But the record company, it was all just promo, road shows, TV, it's all just promo. When we've got time, when we, soon we'll have time. Whether they were knowingly putting us off because they just thought it was going to be such a shambles like it was back in the early days, even though obviously we'd learned to play better by then, or whether they just thought promote, let's just go for it and keep the ball rolling. So it was annoying, really. And I think that's why later on, when we did at least a couple of reunions, like the 2010 reunion, we showed people like we can kick ass, we can play, we can perform. And that was really nice. That was a good feeling.
Yes. And did you feel the legacy of the band after that period just got slightly dropped? Because you had a couple of weird collections and compilations, didn't you? Which seemed a bit odd at the time. I remember sort of getting
I wasn't part of a lot of those. Yeah, they were weird. Thank you for saying that. The one with the picture of the boobs on it.
Yes, that was very disappointing, wasn't it?
Thank you. Yes, it's horrible. Yeah,
odd sort of ideas. So yes, with Martin, with this book, are you hoping, and we all hope in a way, to sort of put the legacy of the band in a bit of a different light and to sort of shine a spotlight on it?
Yeah, definitely. I think that the girls are overlooked. Fuzzbox are overlooked a little bit in terms. There's been something recently, a girl band documentary. I haven't seen it, but I've been led to believe that Fuzzbox, for example, don't feature in it, and I just think that's bonkers. Now I understand that they weren't a vocal group, but they certainly set a foundation for what came in the 90s, 2000s in terms of the vocal group girl bands. And I'm not knocking them. They had their place, Girls, Spice Girls, part of British history, absolutely. But we have it in the book, for example, that that was calling them Sporty Spice, Posh Spice, etc., was a direct link from when the girls done their own names in, I think it was a Smash Hits magazine or something.
Right.
Jackie, I think we took. Yeah, I
Jackie,
think, well, we
right?
used to
Okay.
win quite a lot of them, in fairness.
So it was a direct inspiration, and I think without that, we wouldn't have had necessarily the Spice Girls that we got. I think they certainly they were very trailblazing. Fuzzbox were, and certainly they were around at a time that was probably more male dominated in the industry at that time. And they just raged against that machine, you know, and did what they had to do and done it very well. And the story is very compelling. Not just the music going from, we've spoke about the two camps of Big Bang and before that Boston Steve Austin, but the actual journey that them girls went on and some of the things they had to face and some of the funny stories as well behind. So I think, yeah, it's trying to put Fuzzbox back on the map, and 40 years anniversary feels like, okay, people take note, this happened in the 80s with this girl band. Before you knew about the Spice Girls, the Saturdays, Girls Aloud, etc., that we had Fuzzbox, and they played their own instruments as well, which is
Yes, well, absolutely. Well, I think it was an amazing time, and I think when, a decade ago or more, the 80s narrative was told in a very boring way. It was like, oh, it was the Blitz Kids and New Romantics, it was Live Aid, and it was Trevor Horn and Frankie. And I remember thinking, God, that wasn't my 80s at all. But,
No.
and now I think people are all sort of putting their story in it. And I think that's what makes the 80s kind of interesting, but also that alternative thing. Because I do remember, again, as being a fanboy, there were those bands like, you had the Primitives, didn't you? And then you had the Darling Buds and you had the Fuzzbox. And then before that, you had Everything But the Girls. So there was some, and then you had those other bands like the June Brides and Mighty Mighty. And I mean, there was just locally, everybody had a scene, Sheffield had a sound. And then you had different places that all, like Bristol, Glasgow. They did have a quality, which I think is good. But it's been nice seeing people put together their archives or reissues and their story. And I think it's just allowed a lot of young people, which I often see, and I'm slightly hypnotized by this, on various social media platforms, where they'll play a song from like 40 years ago and be miming to it, which is a bit of a weird thing. And it's even weirder for someone like me to watch. But I'm always curious what songs they pick, because I think, how would you have known that? Your parents weren't probably, well, they probably were alive, their parents, but they must have been quite young. And it's just kind of curious that people have become quite interested in the indie scene of the 80s. And I think books like this do help people, kind of get a chance to listen to it again. And I think that's kind of what's been so important.
And I do think the 80s is the decade that just keeps giving. It just, I mean, I can't really remember a time when, apart from maybe like, I don't know, like the 90s or something for a little bit, but in recent decades, it's been popular for so long, the fashions, the music, because so much happened at that time. But yeah, I mean, what I really love about the book as well for me is that, so originally when I had the idea of doing it, I just thought of it as more of a sort of scrapbook, kind of a bit like the inside cover of Boston Steve Austin, with silly pictures and a few fun stories. But as we went on, it grew into something else, and we felt that it should be something deeper. And it's got so many layers. So people who are really interested in like the 80s, sort of particularly from mid to end 80s. They will, I think, be really interested in a lot of the stuff that went on in the book. Then, female musicians, or just women who were, or people who were teenagers in the 80s, or people who were in the sort of Brum and the West Midlands scene would be interested in it, or just like a fascinating story of how some schoolgirls, their journey in the music business. Somebody interviewed the other day, who was it, Martin? And they said it's almost like a manual on how, from scratch, like how to form a band and how to, to progress in the music business. They thought it was great.
Was it Gary, Wolverhampton Community Radio?
I think it was Gary. Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's lovely. People keep finding different things in it, and just like four girls growing up together and navigating life and, eating disorders and differences of opinion and relationships. And
I mean, I mean, that was something very early on. I wanted to, they asked me to get involved, so careful what you wish for, girls. But, I thought, if you're going to do this, let's do it properly. And obviously, as an independent person to the band, so to speak, even though sometimes I feel like a fifth Fuzzbox member. I am the George Martin of Fuzzbox.
Yes.
So, I thought, I could see that. I think what we've done with the book, it's a collaboration and there's a balance. I think that all that sort of vibey colour within the pages is there. But like I said, I always thought this is a story that needs telling, ladies, and let's go for it, let's peel back the layers of the onions, and I always think with a biography as well, what people want to read, they want to get something that's surprising that they didn't necessarily know before reading that book about the artist. They get behind the scenes of the girls. Nothing too dark, although we do go a little bit into the shadow of the pink sunshine. But overall, it is a celebration. I think that comes through as the book, especially with what they achieved as 4 young girls. But yeah, I just thought very early on, you've got to tell the story, girl. We've got to go for it. We can't make it too light. I think this story deserved to be told. And
yeah, God, absolutely. And obviously, it was very sad because Joe was one of those people who passed away so young, which is always a bit of a shock when you're growing up. You don't expect anyone to die. And then because Tina had slightly disappeared from...
Oh, completely.
So did she kind of, when you contacted her, was she kind of happy to re-enter and tell her story as well and sort of promote it?
Well, we weren't really in touch at the time. So it started off with Maggie and I doing the book together, and then Maggie left the project, and it was me for a while. And then Tina's like, whoa, really, really into it, and it's absolutely lovely. We're having a ball. But Martin, you'd already emailed her anyway that you contacted her about making some because I really did want her to contribute. It seemed the surviving member. Whatever she wanted to contribute, as far as I was concerned, was great. Like, let's try to get as much of it as even as possible, so that we're. But you're already in contact. But
so I reached out to Tina because I thought it was important that she had a voice in the book, as it's a Fuzzbox collective story, if you like.
Yes.
Even though the 3 ladies sometimes remember things very differently.
Well, yes,
just with the passage of time. So that's had to be dealt with.
Sometimes for good, sometimes not.
Yeah. Or sometimes that didn't happen, did it? I mean, this is something that keeps reoccurring. Tina doesn't even remember meeting Paul McCartney, but we've got photographic evidence, so she did.
Hilarious, absolutely bonkers.
But yeah, so obviously, ideally, we all 4 original members. If Joe could have had a voice in it, that would have been brilliant. But we've obviously tried to put in what we can from. Because she lives through the other 3 ladies have contributed, and obviously some of the things that are out there with interviews, etc. So Joe's a part of it. But yeah, I thought it was important that all 3 ladies were able to contribute to the book and say things. So I reached out to Tina, and Tina was very much I've done my thing as a pop star. That I'm putting that to bed now. But I think as time went on with the book evolving. And me probably banging her on about, can you answer this? Can you answer that? I think she got a little bit like, you know what? Actually, this is a legacy I should celebrate. I was in a band X amount of years ago, and and she seems, and I think she's actively living this. I'm going to enjoy it again. I've got kids now. They should know really what their mum done and that kind of thing. So that it's really nice actually that she kind of has come back from out in the wilderness, so to speak. She's like Kung Fu. She walked the earth barefoot for years, and now she's.
She was more than happy just away from the limelight, not playing musical instrument or anything, and just off, having a lovely family and with a hubby and the dogs and whatever, just living teaching. I was more than happy doing that. But also she'd got in touch with me and said, do you fancy meeting up? and we didn't. It was just absolutely lovely. It really, really was really lovely, and I think that helped a lot as well because we got on like a house on fire. Still daft as brushes, and had a good laugh, and there's a real fondness between us still. So yeah, it's going really well. And I mean, she played at the launch. The first time she's even sat on like drum kit or anything for like 35 years, and just got up and did it.
It
Yeah, I
was
think
actually
she's
the first time you two had played together on stage
yeah,
for 35 years, is it?
yeah.
Blimey, that is kind
I
of
know,
weird, isn't
amazing.
it? Have you done it? Has that meant you've been, obviously been in the band and you obviously process it a bit, but then with age, has it brought back kind of a lot of processing that you've done? I don't know what the term would be in the new age world. It would be kind of healing or just sort of dealing with stuff that's been interesting and sometimes challenging, but also quite healing as well. Vix, has this kind of, because it is kind of 40 years ago and there's a huge formative period as you mentioned. I just wondered what it was like on your kind of emotional state at times, sort of going through it and seeing the pictures and the stories and hearing other people's stories as well.
Yeah, I mean, because I obviously I've kept performing and releasing bits of music and having different bands over the years. Nothing of that the scale of Fuzzbox, so I've always kind of kept in with it. But I mean, it was really really nice to do the book, and I do feel very proud of it. Um, and there was stuff to process because it's going back over old things. Like we talk a fair bit about my eating disorder and some of the issues that I had back then. So some of it was quite hard going. But I mean, the things I'm a wellbeing coach, so this is my little it's happy life, my little
Yes.
bit. So I do wellbeing in the music, and so I think I've got quite a lot of good tools. And you just, it's like you have to make sure, like it's like heal thyself. You need to make sure that you take your own good advice of how to process it. But I mean, Martin and I became really great mates as well. And so there's been a lot of good support for each other as we've gone through. And a lot of it's been really delightful because one of us will remember something, and either fill in the gaps or something, completely different that the other person didn't remember, like Paul McCartney or whatever. So
Yes.
it has been quite a journey just doing this book, and it's taken a lot longer than it we thought it would. But once Martin got involved, really, that was when it all kind of really obviously gathered momentum. And also my brother-in-law Robin George passed away,
Yes.
and like I'd sort of mentioned to Martin perhaps about doing a biography for him while he was still alive, but we knew he was terminally ill, and he loved that idea. And my sister was really happy to. So Martin did that for a while. So there's been a lot going on, and I was caring for my mum for the last 4 years, who's recently passed. So it's been a lot. There's been a lot of stuff going on. But
Yes.
this life, you got to kind of just keep seeing where you're at and surround yourself with good people you can trust, and
Yes.
not be too hard on yourself.
I think, yes, be kind at all times. So,
Yeah.
how can people get a copy of this book, Martin? How is the best way to do this?
Yeah, the obvious place at the moment is Amazon.
Right.
So, saying that, we would not turn down requests of signed copies, and we could sort something out. The best way, usually people are engaging for that at the moment. Well, obviously we had the launch, and that exploded. I mean, there was queues out the door. It was actually really wonderful. It was a very nice
Sold
thing.
out. It was
All
great.
the love for Fuzzbox and
Yes.
people in the room was brilliant. But since then, because not everyone obviously can get to Birmingham on a Thursday night where we had the launch, we've had people from America saying, "I want a signed copy. I want a signed copy." So we've done that, and we can do
Had
that.
people from America turn up.
And we
And
had,
told
yeah,
us.
we had someone fly over from America, which is just
Yeah.
actually, we could have given him then 2 signed copies to take back, although one was New York,
Oh.
one was California. I've posted them today, actually. So, yeah, if you contact through Fuzzbox Official or my website, you can contact me through my website, which is very imaginatively called www.martintracy.co.uk. Then we can sort out signed copies.
Yeah, so the place where Fuzzbox is most active is definitely the Fuzzbox page on Facebook.
Yeah.
There's
Right.
a Fuzzbox group, which we're sort of slightly involved in, but not really. So the Fuzzbox official would be the place on Facebook. It's very active. We keep, there's anything that's going on Fuzzbox related is on there. So
It's,
And there will
yes.
be an ebook eventually. We've gone for the we wanted to get it out for Christmas so people could have it in their stockings, although it's quite a big book, as you know, David.
big
Yes.
stuff.
We got it out just before Christmas, but we're looking for a milestone again, being the 40th year anniversary, is where we'll get the ebook out as well, so people will be able to read it digitally, as it is that age now. So
I'm
Yes.
hoping to add a few more little extra bits,
yeah,
aren't we?
like you being
Because-
the Madonna of the indie scene.
Oh yeah.
This is
The thing
very
is, it's funny. Even just at the launch, people were telling us all these amazing stories and facts.
Yes.
Really, and when you played it, really, so it seemed a shame to sort of not get them in. And we did our utmost to get loads of contributions in, and they were fantastic.
Yeah,
There were a few
loads, yeah.
people that we struggled to get hold of, which right at the end, like it was too late. For example, Liam Sternberg, the who wrote some of the stuff or co-wrote it with us for Big Bang. He wrote "Walk Like an Egyptian"
Right.
for the Bangles, and he was amazing. And I managed to finally track him down, but it was just too late, really, by the time we needed to get it to print. So there's a few people like that would really like to get to contribute, and maybe be a few more stories.
Oh, that would be amazing. Well, I'm so pleased because, like I said, I do think, telling history is good when there's more voices than just, the
Yes.
kings and queens and those in power. So it's nice to sort of hear all the other stories. And the photographs that you've got are just amazing as well. It's always so evocative seeing jumpers, hairs and hair and hairstyles. It's just wild.
I know, it's lovely, isn't it?
Again, the photos define them two camps we keep talking about as well. Because we had Mike Grant, who Vic spoke about, who's around right at the organic beginning, and I mean, he's got gold dust. He's got photos from the barrel organ, their very first gig, and then Simon Fowler, who took a lot of the Big Bang era photos that are really glossy and beautifully professional.
Very famous, but he was known as the Smash Hits.
The Smash Hits guy, and he very gallantly allowed us to use them. And it's actually his photo that's on the front cover where Vix has got Fuzzbox written on the
Yes.
So that's actually his photo, and we've got the fan in between. We've got all the fans. We asked the fans. We said, send in all your pictures, and we've got fans of them backstage at concerts and all sorts. And I love that one. The guy cuddling the Fuzzbox pillow. He's sleeping on it.
Yeah, that's Neil Hannon.
And
maybe more photos. We could perhaps get some more photos of people. That'd be lovely.
That would be amazing. So that cover for Boston, Steve Austin, I think is just genius. So how did you bring that together? Who was the art director and the styling as well? I have to say, because I did, buy the album, and vinyl albums always, have nice pictures. So yes, who was the inspiration for that? Or
Andy Airfix was the artist, and he's done some really amazing. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. You will still be able to find his work online, but I'm not sure if the paint by numbers was his idea or whether, because we were always quite childish, whether it was ours now.
Yes.
Maybe one of the other girls remembers that. But Boston, Steve Austin, obviously we had to have that. That was the saying, not just in Brum, but in Birmingham. It was called Brum, but in sort of the Black Country, the West Midlands. Boston means good, like brilliant. Oh, that's Boston. And with the rhyming thing, it was Boston, Steve Austin. That was like, or BSA. That was a big thing. Like everyone used to say that, and we did especially. So we had to have Boston, Steve Austin, and then that collage thing in the middle is just very, very us. Like we just lots of horrible, stupid faces, and just like I love the one me and Joe at school in our PE kit, and we used to put shuttlecocks in the top of put our hoods up and put the shuttlecocks. Honestly, we just said Joe was always the one that got in trouble. I don't know if I was just better at sort of acting or acting innocent, but they'd say, Vickie and Joe, put your hoods down. So, but miss, my head's really, really cold and stuff. Well, and then we'd have our ears sticking out as well, like that. It looked like gnomes, you know. And, well, put your ears in. But then I can't hear what you're saying, miss. And we were just absolute pains, you know. There's a really impish picture of us too. And yeah,
Yes.
just really fun stuff. It's a nice little insight to what we were like, and you know, still a bit like now.
Magic. Well, it is good. I have to say that picture of the barrel organ, you do look incredibly young, actually, don't you? That is
Had
quite
terrible outfits. I mean, just like cut up things and tied a load of ribbon. There's my outfit. Thank goodness my mum started making my outfits after the first couple of gigs. She was amazing. She
God, you
actually
must. So was it did you use crimblers for the hair? Was that the
crimpers.
crimpers?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously didn't know about the ozone layer and hairspray, but yeah, God, you'd use like a can of Bristos and head upside down, and so spray had even gone first, and you'd crimp it, and then you'd have to sort of prise it apart and then spray it again. Oh my gosh!
Yes, it must be a fire hazard.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Well, look, thank you ever so much for your time. This has been amazing, and I'll send you a link as well, and you can have it as well. But yes,
yeah,
all the best for the book, and I hope it goes well. Do you have any musical projects coming out or coming on the horizon, Vix?
Funny you should say yes. I did start putting things out, but really I wanted to do it kind of secret because I didn't want to. I just wanted to kind of do it without any judgment or without any expectations. I just wanted to put it out because I love doing music. So, but then people started to sort of find out a bit. So I kind of pretty much gave up on that, only on a low level. But then also my mum got really ill, so it got a little bit waylaid. But it's called Buzzfox.
Nice.
BZZFOX, and it's really fun. She's like my alter ego, and doesn't give a monkeys about anything, not about age, not about nothing. But it's nice. I think that Fuzzbox fans and you know the ones that have found it have really enjoyed it because it's quite tongue-in-cheek. It's a little bit risque and cheeky and sassy in places, but it's very uplifting, and yes, it's a bit edgy, bit fun.
Excellent. So is that on your Facebook page, or is that?
Well, there is bits, but I mean, probably YouTube. The videos are on there. You might enjoy them. But if you want us to send you anything to play,
well, I'd love to have a listen. Yes, it's always curious what people are up to.
It's quite trancy as well, isn't it?
It's a bit trip hoppy, yeah, a bit all pop, trip hoppy sort of thing. Yeah, a little bit of psychedelia in there.
Wow. So have you got a little band together now, or is this?
Well, it's myself and a producer, so Justin Lindley, and he's in the past done things like Block Party. God, I'm trying to think what else. Kate Perry. No, not Kate Perry, Kate Nash. In Excess.
Right.
What's his name? Elvis Costello. So some stuff like that. But he's absolutely great.
Fantastic.
Really well.
I'll be curious to hear. This is always interesting what people are up to.
Oh, thank
yes.
you for asking. Yes, I should have said, shouldn't I? Oh, should have plugged it.
Definitely.
But yeah, could we send something over?
Yes, we'll do. Please.
Yeah, a nice little EPK with all the
bits and pieces. Okay, that's great. Look, have a lovely evening, and thanks again for your time.
Thank you so much, and thanks for keep doing the C86. It's really important. You're a brilliant.
Yes, we're still
great
doing
questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that, dear listener, is the end of the interview. A massive thank you to Martin Tracey and also Vix from the band. We've got a Fuzzbox. We're going to use it. This has been the C86 show, David Eastaugh. If you want to contact me, you can on any of the social media platform sites. Just do C86 show. And these interviews have been archived on Spotify, iTunes, Podbean. True. Have a great week. Stay safe.